Now, Syria's most important ally, Russia, is under increasing pressure to cut its ties with the Assad regime. But there's a long history between Russia and Syria, and Vladimir Putin doesn't want to walk away from that just yet. So what exactly is that history, and why is it so important? Joining me now from Otago University, the International Relations Professor Robert Patman. Good morning to you, Robert.
Good morning, Samantha.
Now, Russia has twice blocked the UN from taking action against Syria. Why does it remain such a staunch ally of the Assad regime?
Well, I think the reasons are basically geostrategic and political. Strategically, Syria provides Russia's only military base in the Middle East, Tartars, and in addition, Syria is next to Iran, which is another American ally, although not of the same status as Syria. So I think Russia sees Syria as an important foothold in the Middle East. And remember, this is important for Russia because since the end of the Cold War, Russia has seen a steady diminution of its international influence, and so under Mr. Putin, it hopes that it can rebuild its position, at least retain a foothold in the Middle East. And the political reason, I think, is that the Russians feel that they do not want another Western US-led solution to an uprising in the Middle East. They've seen situations in Tunisia, Egypt and Libya where essentially Western preferences have prevailed, and that is that you've had popular unrest culminating in the removal of dictatorships and moves towards more representative government.
How long do you think, though, Russia can go on supporting Syria? We've seen Assad himself come out and deny responsibility for the Hula massacre, saying it's terrorists. Then the US comes out and says, we don't believe you. At what point does Russia really need to change its stance?
Well, I think that, as you mentioned, that the diplomatic pressure will be ratcheted up this week. Mr. Putin met with the EU leadership in St. Petersburg, and they've clearly made the point that Russia really must reconsider its position. A lot will depend on whether Kofi Annan walks away as UN envoy, because the peace plan is currently in tatters. If he resigns from that position, then there'll be no peace plan to effectively uphold. The Russian and the Chinese are adhering to the position that while the peace plan is in tatters, there's no other alternative to back it. And of course, the Western world agrees in some measure. They believe that the Kofi Annan peace plan, although it's not working, it is at least a mechanism for bringing about, in theory, some sort of ceasefire. So they're happy to entertain the idea. But I think developments are moving quite quickly on the ground. I think the massacre in Hola, Samantha, changed the whole paradigm. And I think, yeah.
It's a shame, though, that over 100 people, many of them children, had to die for that pressure to be ratcheted up. Surely,
yeah,
if the peace plan is not being effective, there must be other options on the table. Can't we use Libya as a precedent, as an example here?
Well, Libya occurred a bit early. One thing we have to take into account is the election cycle in the United States. Mr. Obama, and indeed his opponent, Mr. Romney, do not relish a US-led intervention at this point, giving American involvement in places like Afghanistan and Iraq. But one thing is interesting is that Mr. Romney has said that the United States should step up its military assistance for the opposition in Syria. The Obama administration is cautious on that. It doesn't want American arms to flow into... They're not sure about the opposition in Syria. It's divided, and they're worried that there may be groups that they don't want American arms to receive. So there is the option of stepping up military, support for the opposition, but that, from the American point of view, that has some uncertainties. Another option is simply to continue the pressure diplomatically to a point where the Russians feel that they just can't continue with it. There are signs that the Russians are reflecting on their position. The Chinese have also made some reasonably hard-hitting statements in the last 2 weeks about the Assad's regime. Okay,
thank you. We have to leave it there. That is Otago University International Relations Professor Robert Patman.